We are the higher self of the One, known to this instrument in the language vibration sequence terms as Dirk Adrian Van Tonder, whose incarnation cycle began on the space-time illusion complex as referred to by your people as 1985, and we are now communicating through this instrument's mind, body, and spirit complex totality for the purpose of providing our thought forms in order to allow a greater and greater extension of its consciousness and also allow for the greater extension of its incarnation rhythms, allowing for further fluidity of its mind, body, and spirit complex totality, following which this entity has placed many queries before this instrument's mind, body, and spirit complex, regarding which we are now going to share. This entity, known as Dirk Adrian Van Tonder's incarnation cycle, began on the first incarnation, after it originated from the one infinite creator on the lands known as the Sirius B planetary sphere, wherein it was able to learn the lessons of the first density consciousness as a water element, trying to learn the lessons of beingness and also trying to learn the lessons of understanding the expectancy of its mind, body, and spirit complex totality to allow for the raising of its planetary vibration and consciousness towards a greater and greater experience of the understanding of unity and of the self. Furthermore, this entity's main purpose in this first density reality was to learn the lessons of beingness as a first density entity. Soon this entity reached into the later vibrations of that reality, allowing it fruition and also allowed for a greater and greater experience of its interaction as it was able to program its consciousness towards the understanding of beingness, allowing for greater and greater extension of its mind, body, and spirit complex totality, following which this entity's incarnation cycle started to reach into the higher vibration timeline. After learning the lessons of this reality, it was capable enough to then reach into the vibrations of the self, which allowed this entity to then enter into the later vibrations of the first density consciousness, giving rise to the extension and the understanding of reality creation, allowing it to then formulate a plan of understanding and giving rise to the experience of its mind, its body, and spirit complex totality towards the second density of beingness. It was known by the soul name of Tubara in that incarnation cycle. This allowed the entity to then learn much of the lessons in this timeline, giving rise to the extension of its consciousness and also the understanding of reality and also the experience of the mind, body, and spirit totality experience, allowing it to further expand itself into a higher vibrational rhythm, giving rise to the experience of the self and the internal nature of reality. This gave this entity the understanding of the mind, the body, and the spirit complex totality, following which this entity was able to experience a greater and greater understanding of reality, allowing which this entity will be able to understand the lessons of unity of consciousness, giving rise to the experience of the mind, body, and spirit complex, which led this entity to enter into a later vibration of the second density reality as a pet life form. It spent its timeline. Soon this led it to then become more and more oriented towards the understanding of the third density reality of choice and self-awareness, as it chose the pathway of third density of reality of entry into the timeline of choosing the pathway of polarity between service to others and service to self. It was able to gain greater and greater extension of its mind, body, and spirit complex totality, and recognizing this, it was able to formulate a greater plan of action, allowing for the mind, the body, and the spirit complex to experience and to entertain a greater headway into the understanding of the choice, for it was able to choose the pathway of service to others, which gave this entity the opportunity of becoming more and more oriented towards the aspect of positive service to others. It was then transported to the planet Earth. In the lands of Atlantis, it spent its timeline trying to learn the lessons of the later third density vibration, which gave this entity a proper entry into the reality of later third density vibration in the lands of Atlantis, and because of the lessons it learned in that timeline, it was also able to experience a greater and greater extension of its conscious understanding of the reality in which it found itself in. This allowed it to then prepare itself for the extension and the entry into the higher vibrational rhythms of reality. Therefore, we can already sense that this entity chose the pathway of positive service to others in the lands of Atlantis, leading it to then accentuate and enter into a higher vibrational rhythm, allowing it further and further progression and entry into the higher vibrational timeline of the self, giving rise to the extension of its conscious understanding towards the understanding of the reality of positive service to others. This led this entity to then reach into the vibration of transition into the third density vibration, and it incarnated on the Earth planet in the first incarnation on 1873. In that incarnation cycle, it was known by the soul name of Udara, wherein it spent its timeline trying to formulate the experience of incarnation rhythms and also trying to formulate the experience of the understanding of the unity consciousness, which shall and allow this entity to work further and further into a higher baseline rhythm of reality. This led this entity to then experience a greater understanding of the self. Hence, after learning the lessons of service to others and service to self balancing in the previous incarnation, it became ready for transition to this current timeline on 1985. And now this entity's main purpose is to open its vibrations towards the entry into the fourth density vibration, as the window is now open. We can already sense that this entity's pathway is opened currently towards a greater and greater service to others orientation pathway. Hence, we leave you now in love and light of the one Creator. Bye.